Hi, and welcome to Tennis.com headquarters. I'm Ed McGrogan here with Peter Bodo. Pete, we're catching up a week after the clay court season, to borrow a phrase from our colleague Steve Tigner, blew up possibly with Stan Wawrinka winning Monte Carlo. And he didn't win it over Djokovic or even Rafa. He beat Federer in the final. Where does Stan now rank in the pecking order of clay court contenders? Because I think a lot of people are taking this win and thinking even bigger things for him.
Well, look, it's pretty funny. First of all, I got to preface that by saying everyone ranks number 2 in the clay court pecking order behind Rafael Nadal until proven otherwise. Now, we took a step in that direction in Monte Carlo when David Ferrer beat Nadal, so who knows. But I would put Wawrinka right up there in that leading group. Now, Ferrer is a very, very tough out on clay. I think the fact that he's lost so much to Rafa in the past, French Open final last year, it tends to diminish the fact that he was so far from Rafa, how much better he is than a lot of other guys. So I still put him a little bit up there, as well as Djokovic. But then you've got a bunch of people, including Federer and Wawrinka, who are maybe a cut above, I think, the Tsongas and the Berdicks and some of the other players who have not really done it in a big way in a clay court Grand Slam or a Masters.
Speaking of those guys, Tsonga, Ferrer, Berdych, a lot of them have mentioned that Wawrinka's watershed win in Australia, it gave him the confidence that there was more in the Big Four, that they could get that elusive major title. But, do you think that those players will actually make that leap, or is Wawrinka kind of a unique case?
I'm kind of inclined to think that Wawrinka is a unique case. I mean, I've been thinking about this, and, his game is, I think, just that much better. He took a big major step with his game, and his game visibly has all the properties you would expect for him to be able to punch through and do that. Now, these other guys, they've played pretty much the same game. I mean, they haven't really changed very much, and I don't see them changing very much. So while it's certainly possible that if, Berdych has played a final, Tsonga's played a final, it's very possible one of them will win a Grand Slam. But what's really interesting to me is how transformational that thing was for Wawrinka and how convincing it was. You look at that game and say, yeah, it's right, that guy should be there. That's by the way, I think that's one of the reasons Monte Carlo win was so important, is because it really kind of confirmed that he belongs there. People, you don't have to talk about Rafa's back when you talk about the Australian Open final anymore.
Yeah, and, that validation by Wawrinka, I was kind of wondering what you think, how this all impacts Roger Federer, his countryman from Switzerland. Now, Wawrinka, he came into Monte Carlo as a Swiss #1. He retained that rank by beating Federer in the final. These two have a Davis Cup partnership, a long history together. Do you think Wawrinka's season to this point has been a positive influence on Roger, negative, or really no influence at all?
Yeah, I could see Roger storming into the Swiss Federation's office screaming about the fact that how could you make Wawrinka #1 in Switzerland? How could you put him on a Davis Cup team alongside me, the great Roger? No, we know Roger better than that. We know that Roger Federer, I don't know that we know this, but it seems to me that Roger Federer is very happy. I think that, he's a great guy. He's a nurturing guy. So I think he's happy to have Wawrinka as kind of, more than his wingman. It used to be that Wawrinka would be so deferential to Federer. They'd play each other in singles. Federer would clean his clock. Now, it was funny, after Monte Carlo, he was saying, well, early in his match with Federer in the final, he's saying, well, we're both looking at each other across the net, and we're both a little tense, and suddenly they're equals. And I think this also lights a fire under Roger, because as much as Roger might enjoy mentoring Stan, and as happy as he must be for the Switzerland's chances in the Davis Cup, a part of him also says, hey, wait a second, Stan's great, but I mean, let's not forget, I'm Roger Federer, you're not. So I think this is going to be great motivation for him.
Yeah, we can thank Stan for, I think, making this whole year, not just the clay court season, into something a little more interesting than we've seen in the ATP in some time. So we'll talk about that next time on the video with Pete Bodo, Ed McGrogan. Thanks for listening.